Сайн байцгаана хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай жаргал дефакто нэвтрүүлгээр агаарын тээврийн мэрэгжилтийн ноён Spiro Deligiannis оролцож байна. Good evening.
Good evening. Good
Very
to be back
nice.
here.
Good, very good. Very nice to see you again on this program. And we had 4 or 5 years ago this program, and at that time you were working for Eznis
Correct.
Airline. And today we'd like to discuss a bit about air transportation business. Maybe since that we have gone, ups and downs. We had a couple airlines bankrupt, couple airlines created, etc. You have been working for Eznis Airways, Vice President, Commercial Operations, right?
Correct. I worked for Eznis Airways for 3+ years when I lived here in Mongolia between 2008 and 2011.
See, by this time, Eznis has filed for bankruptcy, and it's probably one of the first airline here to officially to file for that and bankrupt. Let's see this case. I understand you were not here when it was bankrupt, but overall, as a person who was running and planning and major operations of the airline, what went wrong with that?
So, again, I've been away from Eznis for over 3+ years. From what I understand, the airline has actually suspended operations. It's not declared bankruptcy, but it's suspended operations. So, Jargo, it's one of those things. It's partly commercial and partly aeropolitical. In terms of, there was part of the reason why I left, there were decisions that I did not necessarily agree with the board. In terms of commercially, they could have been better decisions in terms of aircraft acquisition and the fleet type. However, also the aeropolitical environment is as such in Mongolia that for any private airline, it is difficult to operate on a commercially responsible basis here.
You said it is to do with also the decisions about aircraft type. What was wrong?
Again, this is my personal
Yeah,
opinion.
it doesn't matter, because then for Mongolians who today or tomorrow who will consider type of aircrafts, that would be interesting answer. I mean, it will be your perspective, but that still will be an addition.
Okay, so again, this is my perspective. In terms of the appropriate aircraft here in Mongolia, it's not jet aircraft flying domestically or nearby international routes. You need smaller turboprop aircraft, such as Saabs, what Aero Mongolia has in terms of the Fokker 50s, ATRs, or Bombardiers. Even though those planes are more expensive to acquire or to lease, to operate, they are far more efficient than something as the RJ that Eznis Airways acquired.
Okay, so with the type of runway we have, well, including in a couple of places we have a asphalted, we call it, covered runway. Because you fly domestically to different airports, right? This one is not the right equipment, you said, because it's a jet.
Well, it's just, again, this is my opinion, but in terms of, it's a four-engine aircraft with 93 seats. It's one of the few jet aircraft that can operate on unpaved runways. The problem is, though, it requires a lot of fuel for landing and for taking off. Jet fuel. And because jet fuel is so prohibitively expensive in Mongolia, it does cost a lot to operate that aircraft.
Well, still it's expensive. It's, I think, a substantial part of operation cost, the fuel is. And still it's monopolistic in this country, supplied by only one company. How you were and all other airlines were dealing with that situation when you were operating Eznis?
Yeah, and the thing is, that's not something that affects Eznis. That affects every single domestic Mongolian carrier, as well as the international carriers, be it Aeroflot, Korean, what have you. It's awfully expensive to purchase jet fuel here in Mongolia. And the best example I can give was Aeroflot in 2008, 2009, when the jet fuel increased so dramatically. When they would fly from Moscow here to Ulaanbaatar, going back to Moscow, they would stop in Irkutsk simply to fill up on fuel because it was more expensive to fill up here.
And they were staying there with the passenger?
Correct. The jet would just go to Irkutsk, maybe for half an hour, 45 minutes, just to fill up on fuel, and then continue on to Moscow.
Well, that's the situation, one of the reasons why airline transportation doesn't or is not being been developed in Mongolia fast. You have been working for United Airlines before you joined Eznis. Hong Kong based in several operations around the Asian and Pacific. What is in general optimal ratio of fuel costs in operation costs of airline? Just to make a benchmark.
It depends on what the price of fuel is, but traditionally, what the highest costs used to be were employee expenses and then distribution costs in terms of selling the tickets and then fuel. Mm-hmm. Once fuel increased so dramatically, for a lot of airlines, it went to well over 50% of their costs. Now fuel in the rest of the world has decreased significantly this past year as well, which is a benefit to the airlines that have taken cost-cutting measures internally to reduce their operating costs.
I see. You have been also opening offices for Eznis, United Airlines, earlier in also for Asia Pacific, including Mongolia. What was the difficulties, if you can rank, would you, then to open, to make successful sales for Mongolian Airlines in Mongolia and around Mongolia?
So the best thing to do is find a local partner. I've been coming to Mongolia since 2003, when I first came with United Airlines, to find a local representative for United Airlines here to sell its tickets. So the biggest obstacle is finding a local partner in terms of one that is commercially minded, not corrupt and ethically just responsible in terms of doing the best things both for the airline that it represents and itself as a travel agency to the community at large here. So I came several times in 2003, 4, and 5. We appointed a local agent, which is still, to this point, from my understanding, still the representative for United Airlines, AirTrans, and that's a relationship that has worked for both United Airlines, AirTrans, as well as the Mongolian population at large in terms of facilitating travel to and from the United States, be it with United or its Star Alliance partners. With Eznis, it was the same thing. When I went to Beijing, Seoul, and Tokyo, again, it was finding a local partner in China, in Japan, in Korea, that could best facilitate and represent Eznis Airways to its local travelers that wanted to come to Mongolia.
You know, your opinion is very important because you are not working for any airlines in this country today. You are familiar with the issue we always face in Mongolia. Almost all passengers, for example, flying to the U.S. and other Southeast Asia has only one route. They go almost by Korean Air to Seoul, and from Seoul all around the world. I mean, it keeps going on, and the ticket between Ulaanbaatar and Seoul is still expensive. How do you find it? And I mean, you are one of the persons who used to know it closer.
Yeah, the situation in Mongolia really only benefits perhaps 30 people, while 3 million people suffer. That's really the best way to put it. In terms of the Civil Aviation Authority and MIAT being the national flag carrier, the policies are geared towards what is best for MIAT, but not necessarily what is best neither for the Mongolian people nor the economy of Mongolia. So that's why Mongolia itself finds in a situation where to come to the country or to leave the country, it's prohibitively expensive because it does not make economic sense. Politically, it may make sense, and unfortunately, commercially, it does not.
So that's one of the examples where Korean Air in Mongolian MIAT has a monopoly right. No Asian, Siana, nobody is flying on this route until now.
Correct. And again, what happens in most countries where you have a national flag carrier, and again, MIAT is no better nor worse than any other country that has a national flag carrier. What happens, though, it's not for the best interest of the economy. It's not in the best interest of the country. There's always that sense of patriotism and nationalism that we need a national flag carrier, that we're proud of it. But generally what's happening in the rest of the world, it's becoming so costly to operate these national flag carriers.
Being a national flag carrier that would not allow particular routes to other airlines, right?
Correct. In the name of supporting the national flag carrier.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it's a drain on the tax revenue. It's a drain on the economy, and it doesn't help the average person.
Spiro, you speak also Greek. You are Greek, American
I am Greek,
yes. And Greek Airlines, Olympic.
Olympic.
And Air India. Please tell us a few examples where like EMEA, national carrier is not doing very well?
I can tell you a lot of examples worldwide where the national flight carriers are not doing well. But personally, let's say with Olympic Airways, it used to be the national flag carrier of Greece. And Greece, the number one industry is actually tourism. So it's very important to have a strong carrier. However, it became so costly to operate, and in terms of things that were being done with Olympic, it didn't benefit the country as a whole. Olympic no longer exists. It has been bought out by a private carrier called Aegean. And Aegean, which is part of Star Alliance, facilitates quite well and serves Greece very well.
What happened? The process of the conversion, how it happened? The privatization, or how did the other airline bought it?
Every country is different, but what happened with Greece initially was that Aegean, Olympic was privatized itself. It really couldn't function as a private airline, and then eventually Aegean bought it out. And that's why the name Olympic no longer exists.
Нэгдэл хамтын хүч, итгэл даах чадвар, ил тод шударга зарчим бидний амжилтын үндэс. Хөдөлмөрч хичээнгүй, хүсэл зорилготой хүмүүс бидний харилцагчид. Нийгмийн хариуцлага, шинэ үйлчилгээ, дэвшилтэт технологи, шинэ үзүүлэлтүүд бидний давуу тал. Улсын хааны сэлээс уудам тарнуудын хязгаарт хүртэл бид таны амжилтын төлөө ажилладаг. Хаан банк.
Цаг хугацаа давтагдчихгүй. Харин түүнийг яаж зөв ашигласнаар бидний амжилт бүтээл, аз жаргал биднийг дагдаг. Урлагийн хүний хувьд гэр бүл, уран бүтээлдээ зарцуулах цагаа зөв зохицуулах хэрэгтэй байдаг. Бидний хэрэглээ улам ухаалаг болсоор байгаа нь та бүхэнд харагдаж байна. Харин энэ бүхэн надад үнэхээр их таалагдчих.
Ухаалаг орон сууц. King Tower Apartment.
See, the version in Mongolia now we talk about is privatization through shares, stock open stock exchange, and it initially to have certain percent, but less than majority. I mean, minority shares to be owned by state, so that the other side have full freedom. And down the road, when the value of company grows up, then they will sell, say, half of what the government owns. This is the procedure where I think Lufthansa and several other national airlines have gone through. Would you agree?
Yes, and that's a good way to approach it if it's done correctly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so national airlines. So there's difficulties we see in Mongolia. What we talk is, it's called open air policy, right? And please tell us about this open air policy. What was the benefit? What was the loss, etc.? Please tell us.
The benefit of having an open skies policy is that there's no limitation on what any airline can fly to and from, for instance, in this case, to and from Ulaanbaatar.
Uh-huh.
So the best case here would be with Korea.
Uh-huh.
Right now, only Korean Airlines is allowed to operate from the Korean side,
yes,
and Miat from here.
Yes.
It would benefit the country as a whole if Aegean was allowed to come
yes,
in. Because that way, the fares would go down dramatically.
The customers will win, isn't it?
It's a win for the customers, it's a win for the economy, it's a win for Mongolia.
Tell us about this, once the airline, in particular for a country like Mongolia, landlocked, there's no other way to come to this country faster. So airline comes, many passengers come. What is the triggering issue effect on the economy?
It's many ways, Jargo, so many ways. So for instance, right now, the good thing is that besides Aeroflot, there's also another European carrier coming here, Turkish. But it's a one-stop connection at this point. So imagine if Turkish could come here nonstop, or Lufthansa were coming nonstop, or a carrier like Singapore Airlines or Cathay were also coming here nonstop. You'd get a lot more people coming to the country, and as they come here, they would spend money at hotels, at restaurants, at shops. It would go out to the countryside. It would help the tour operators of trips facilitate more business. The economic impact of having many more people come to Mongolia, be it just simply to visit, for tourism, for business, will create jobs, create more new businesses, and all sorts of other opportunities that people cannot even begin to imagine right now.
Good example, probably Singapore Airlines.
Now that's a case of a national flag carrier where the Sovereign Wealth Fund, Temasek, still owns 56% of the national flag carrier. However, the government of Singapore has said, our focus is not to support Singapore Airlines as the de facto national flag carrier of Singapore, but to support the airport. And what they've done is they've built a low-cost terminal at the airline, which undermines Singapore Airlines business, but it helps Singapore as a country as a whole.
So they have two airports. One is the major airports internationally, everybody is flying. Yeah. Then they have a low-cost terminal.
It's the same airport. You just built another terminal there.
Part of it, okay.
Yeah, it's the same airport, it's the same runways, but it's another low-cost terminal, it's another building to allow airlines to have many more flights of frequency, many more flights to Singapore. And what happens is the airfares have gone dramatically down. So many people now are coming to Singapore. Again, Singapore has a casino for the shops, spa, massage, shopping, taking taxis, things of that nature, that the Singapore government has realized what's in its best interest is not Singapore Airlines, but to facilitate the airport.
So to focus not only for the tourism development of the country, not only for the airlines for the sake of airlines, but for rather than there's a whole economy, all part of tourism.
And it's a much broader perspective, and the whole country benefits as a whole, as well as job creation, as I said, new businesses, and just a lot more people coming to the country.
Yeah, because your comment is very relevant. Now, just after ITB, Berlin, Mongolia had a wonderful promotion.
Yes.
But product-wise, we still have a lot of bottlenecks, including the issue we are talking about, international air transportation and domestic air transportation. And by the way, Miat, which is being a national carrier, doesn't fly domestically. How can be in an airline flag carrier if it doesn't fly domestically? And then who will fly domestically?
So I applaud Mongolia being one of the major sponsors this year and a joint partner with ITB in Berlin. It's definitely a step in the right direction. However, the analogy I use is that Mongolia, again, it's known for its countryside, its beautiful landscapes, its majestic sceneries, its blue skies. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful place to visit. But it's like having a beautiful home and you invite the rest of the world to come to it. Except when you tell people to come to it, you don't tell them, oh, by the way, there's really no road. And the road that's provided is very expensive, and you have to figure out how to do it. That's the analogy that I have.
That's the situation of our president, I think. Because you know what he said? He said, when you ask who invited you to Mongolia, tell them that I have invited you. So it's like the situation where he had invited to a wonderful house, but no way to come.
And it's difficult to come. That's what it is. It's very difficult to come, be it from Europe, from Southeast Asia, from North America. It's extremely difficult to come here, whereas the rest of the world is interconnected quite well. It's still, as you said, a bottleneck as well, too. Not only are the connections difficult, but when most people want to come here during the summer, there is not the airline seats, there's not the hotel room, it's just there's a bottleneck here. And that's what the issue is well, too. So I applaud Mongolia for having the foresight to go to ITB and promote, but you need a lot of things need to happen here in terms to allow. It's one thing to welcome a visitor, but you have to make them feel welcome in terms of facilitating what their needs are.
Yes, in terms of food, staying, accommodation. Let's talk a bit about the business environment in Mongolia during your stay here. How was it?
Well, when I was
in terms of tax, many things.
I can't speak to tax, but I can say in terms of the investor sentiment.
Okay.
Those were probably some of the best years that Mongolia had in terms of looking towards its future. in 2000, especially 10 and 11, in terms of global sentiment towards Mongolia. As far as, it had one of the fastest appreciating currencies in the world, as well as the stock market, one of the hugest gains. There was so much anticipation of what Mongolia will be. Here we are now, 4 or 5 years later. The sentiment has gone, from such a high level to now. I've come back a couple times back to the country, and every time I come back, I see the optimism is waning.
So this was, it is because we are dependent too much on mining, and exactly the topic we'll talk about is making Mongolia independent on mining, dependent on other economic sectors, including tourism.
Such as tourism.
Yep, this is really on time, and I think what we talk will be seen by people who are related to tourism. The other issue I wanted to discuss with you was to learn your opinion was more and more airlines flying over Mongolia today. And there is a certain proposals to be sort of at least air cargo hub in UB because due to this geographic location. How do you see that? Is it possible or is it?
Yeah, so Mongolia it's in a unique situation in terms of it being landlocked, but where it is at in terms of located so far north, in terms of the polar routes, flying from North America coming over here, the U.S. and the Canadian carriers fly over Mongolia. And by doing so, they pay flyover rights to the Civil Aviation Authority here. So there are a lot of monies that are collected simply by these airlines flying from North America over Mongolia, going to Hong Kong, going to Singapore.
So all these planes are money?
Yes, it is money, and likewise coming from Europe as well too. When they come this way, going to Beijing and Seoul and Tokyo.
Yes.
So they don't land in Mongolia; they're just flying over Mongolian airspace.
If there is any chance to get them, probably passengers not feasible, but cargo-wise, can they collect from Southeast Asia everything in Mongolia? We call it sorting out. Then they fly to the other directions. Is it viable?
And that's one thing the government should think about, especially with the construction of the new airport slated to open up here in a couple of years.
Yes.
That, to use that more than just for passenger services.
Okay.
How Mongolia reinvents itself in terms of somewhat of a cargo logistics hub for goods coming from going from Southeast Asia to Europe or to North America. Because the planes are more or less going to fly over this way. So why not create something here in terms of cargo logistics? But again, that is something that has to be very well thought out. I think the Middle East carriers have done a wonderful job in terms of facilitating passengers, especially passengers going from Asia and Europe.
Yeah, this Dubai stuff.
Dubai, Doha,
yes,
as well as Abu Dhabi. Yeah, Emirates, Etihad, and Qatar Airways have done a great job. Mongolia, because it doesn't have the market demand in terms of the sheer number of people, the whole country with 3 million people, Ulaanbaatar with 1.5 million people, it won't be able to imitate that and emulate that.
Well, Qatar, the Saudi Arabia, they're also a small population, by the way.
Small populations,
but they have something. The airport is like a whole country.
Yes.
Go and visit. You stay there for a week, then you can still not finish all shops.
And again, the geography helps them in terms of for passenger connectivity. Here, what can be done with the new airport in terms is more so on the cargo, especially with all the mining that eventually will take place in Mongolia, be it next year, in 5 years, 10 years. It is something to think about with Central Asia, Siberia, in terms of why not Ulaanbaatar? Why not here becoming the cargo logistics hub for North Asia?
I suddenly thought, because you are Greek, you speak the language, and now Greek situation, and now new political parties came out and promising there is no more austerity, etc., which is very easy to promise. And they took a 4-month sort of delay of payment, etc. How do you find that situation? Because also Mongolia, we're in that same direction. We're also in big foreign debt. What would be your thoughts?
I think there's many similarities, and it's concerning what's happening in Greece because that situation is going to come to a head here very quickly. Here in Mongolia, I see the same situation in terms of it's easy to blame external factors. In Greece, it's always been Albanians coming into the country and getting the jobs, or Turkey because of oppression and historical issues. Currently, the EU, the World Bank, is to be blamed for these loans. No one ever blames themselves. The same thing I see happening here in Mongolia, be it either political party, and the same thing happens in Greece. It's always someone else that's to blame, be it the Chinese, be it the Russians, be it the foreigners coming here for mining. No one ever looks in the mirror and says, maybe it's us, maybe we need to do something different, maybe we need to think about this different.